get your act together?
I'm ready.
You're ready after you're spilling coffee everywhere.
Coffee.
Red hot.
My coffee got spilled everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Was that good?
Oh, the coffee ice cubes.
The best thing ever?
In case anyone's wondering, if you want to get the best cold brew ever, get a Mizadashi. It's about a 13 to 14-hour brew time. And what you do is you get a pound of coffee, essentially a whole package, dump it in the thing, throw a bunch of ice cubes on top, and you let this thing slow drip as the ice cubes melt for 14 hours straight. And it goes through this like
little
helix coil thing and then drops it in this concentrated in the bottom. Whew, talk about getting jacked up.
Jacked.
Yeah. It's the next level for coffee.
Mine spilt everywhere.
Yeah.
Not bad, but it was enough to...
It was enough to...
I had to change my shorts.
You're like, oh, that's hot.
Yeah, it was. It was on the side thigh. I got some side thigh branch.
All that side thigh. You know, can we talk about how we always talk about putting people in boxes.
Right.
Well, we don't do it, but we talk about people putting other people in boxes.
Right. Those people.
So Boston Consulting Group, what was it? The 70s? When did
60s, I think 1968.
1960s came up with the 2x2 grid.
Mm-hmm.
Right, matrix of grids. Right, this is where the cash cows sit. This is where they sit. Well, you know, anything you can use that makes your consulting look fancy, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it's easy for people to understand.
Well, you can also take a pen and paper and write it out.
Yeah, well, that's the easiest part.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go over this. Let's draw a grid.
Where are you at, CEO?
Yeah, I'm gonna show you where you are. Bottom left quadrant. Okay, you're in quadrant 3. You know, and from a math standpoint, you know, it does make a little bit of sense, but in a 2-dimensional world. But what we find is that we force people into one of these 4 categories. So what happens when you take people that are 3-dimensional and force them into 2-dimensional mathematics to describe them? Aren't we missing a whole dimension of description? A whole dimension of mathematics, of understanding? Yes. So why is it that we found it so prevalent, the use of this type of analysis with these quadrants? And it's like kind of taking charge. Is it like a human thing? And there's some history in here. You want to take us through the history of the 2x2?
Yeah, it was just famous grids. I mean, you had 250 BC Eratosthenes or whatever.
Eratosthenes. Yep.
He's the one-time director of the Library of Alexander, sometimes called the Father of Geography. He was the one that laid grids over maps. And then, you know, now they were spaced out evenly and you could find, you know, you could put lines and do places of interest and stuff like that. We even have that in our Google Maps.
Right.
You know, we look at that. 150 BC, Greek astronomer, mathematician, geographer, Hipparchus. Hipparchus. Establishes a regularly spaced and easier to use grid. And then in 1637.
Oh, what is a regularly spaced grid? What was the dude before him 100 years before doing with his grids? Yeah, this one's a little shorter. This one's a little fatter. He's just like, this place is of more, you know what it was?
Well,
Alexandria is of the greatest interest.
Yes, yeah.
I'm going to put the largest grid around it.
Yeah, that's probably, you know, it's like the same with us with making countries so big that aren't even that actual size.
Well, do you know how they framed out most of the borders here in the western United States? You know, they're all square and stuff like that. The guys would literally go out there, the map makers, they had a stake with a chain and another stake. And it was literally stake, chain, mark, move. All day long, forever through the mountains. Best part about a chain is there's no flex in it, right? This is my guaranteed length. And you do that all day long. What's the easiest way to map it out? Put it in a square.
It's so
Make
crazy.
a circle with a straight chain. The guy be like,
yeah, I mean, luckily we have, I mean, you have drones and stuff like that are taking pictures and they have grid systems on them.
But that's easy for the U.S. Why? Because you're talking about land. It's 2-dimensionally. It's flat. In the simplest form, it's just a flatness.
Yes.
So it's easy to grid that out. But we go through history here, and you got, you know, geneticists, you know, with the Punnett chart, it comes up with, you know, predicting inherent traits depending on the chromosomes, you know, and how they're blended. Okay, that guy's using it. All right, so that kind of makes sense if you're dealing with that sort of binary stuff, because if you're talking about chromosomes that deal with sex, it's male or female in the scientific sense. That makes sense.
Right.
But what happens, Jason, when you bring in the dynamic nature of human beings, a three-dimensional nature of thought and action.
Well, that was the problem in this history. The next one,
tell me.
You look at 1950, mathematicians began to do something with game theory, but the problem is they begin looking at individual decisions, self-interest, collective outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can do that in the 1950s when people had worked 9 to 5 and pretty much everybody lived in the same housing development. I mean, if you can get people to
live a sterile, non-catalytic life.
Yeah, you can, but still, even then, I was looking at, it was so funny. Yesterday they had, I guess there was this photographer in the 1950s that would surprise people at drive-in theaters. So he was kind of like a creep. Like
this guy's a creep. That sounds like a creep.
But he was taking pictures of people like making out in theaters, you know? And so they had like, a guy would have a suit on and the girl would have a dress on and they're in these big cars. But it was like, human nature is human nature. You look great. You go to a Catholic church, you go to the Christian church, but you get people at a drive-in theater and they're alone and there's sexual attraction.
He's in his own separate grid, you know? He has now left the 2x2 quadrant.
I was like, but it's so
else.
funny to look at like a guy has his, hand on this girl's thigh and they're making out, like everybody's making out. It's like, that's no different than what's happening in 2021.
It's
I mean, we may wear more casual clothes, Nike or Lululemon or something, but
the dynamics of our inner nature,
yes, is the same.
Cannot be put into a 2x2. It doesn't work. We're frankly not binary. We're not that binary, right? We are far more complex within ourselves.
Yeah, and they talk about which is interesting, the prisoner's dilemma, which is the most famous example, where two captured criminals associates mulling over whether they should rat out their partner or say nothing. So you put them in. And it's very effective. You can put them, if you're a detective, you have the bad cop, the good cop. We see this in movies. You put them in a room, you tell them the other guy is ratting him out.
But why does that work? Why does that algorithm work? Because there's only two outcomes.
Yes.
I go to jail, I don't go to jail.
Right.
Those are your two outcomes. When you deal with the law, it's a binary system. Did you break the law? Yes or no? That's it. That affords you the opportunity to perfectly work within the probabilities of this 2x2 grid. But if we change the dynamics, maybe the laws are super flexible. They're different across borders. It doesn't work like this. Maybe there's no concept of law. You can't continue to appropriate data to a two-dimensional model on three-dimensional people. That's what we are. We're dimensionally more complex than the simplicity of this flat world. But we force ourselves through marketing, research, and so many other things to limit the amount of vectors we can take, which is essentially up, down, left, right, rather than in, out, up, down, left, right, diagonal, whatever it might be.
Well, and I think in this article, Emily Newstrom, the creator of the New York Magazine, New York Magazine's approval matrix. She said this: I considered a multifaceted, prismatic, 5-dimensional environment with a hidden wormhole impossible to fully portray on paper. So matrix seemed to work as shorthand. So that she's taking a 5-dimensional environment.
What the hell does that even mean?
But a 5-dimensional environment, we've already, quantum physics has already proved we don't even know.
Yeah.
We don't even have, there's dimensions within dimensions. Everything's fractal. The list goes on and on. What happens over here, this outcome, this is observed. So then this happens, and then there's an opposite you in a parallel universe. I mean,
apparently she doesn't understand wormholes.
What does this even mean? A hidden wormhole?
A hidden wormhole? Okay. The wormhole's there. And what do wormholes do? They help you traverse large planes of space in a short amount of time and distance. That means they wrap back into one another. A 2x2 flat 2-dimensional grid has nothing to do with the wormhole at all. She's just saying things that don't make any sense.
Yeah, kind of like me. Especially on our other podcast.
I consider it a multifaceted, so many faces. So it can mean many things. It's prismatic. So
what is it? Let's look at her. Let's pull up her New York Magazine's approval matrix. Let's look up the approval matrix. Let's see what it looks like.
New York Magazine approval matrix. You know, this is the problem, though. People come up with all this highfalutin, crazy stuff.
What's consulting companies?
Yeah, to describe
marketing.
something. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I remember you telling me, you're like, somebody said, "Oh, we should do the branding and all that stuff for Tartle," and then marketing consultant. I was like, "Yeah, we're gonna have some guy in some Gucci outfit. He's gonna have Gucci loafers on, and he's gonna turn around with his velvet smoking jacket on, and then from from Boston or New York or somewhere, and then we're gonna spend hundreds of thousands of dollars."
I need $235,000. I'll create a campaign for you.
Yes, and
we'll manage the campaign. Yes, you don't have to create any content. Neither do we. We'll repurpose.
And then they make everything like a show.
Yeah,
for the customers. Like, here's your logo, and then it's like curtains. Dun, dun, dun. You know, we've had our famous designers, and they did this for the Metropolitan Opera, and did this and this. People, it's showy, bro.
It's all
bullshit, though.
It's all flash. It's all
look at Google's logo.
Smoke and mirrors.
Google has a white page where they make all their money off of ads, but their main page that everybody goes to
and selling people's location data,
colored looking Sesame Street, freaking
primaries.
lowercase all words in different colors. Think about this.
The Brits even figured out that,
and the whole page is white with the box in the middle and a search button.
That's it.
That's what they have going for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most successful tech company out there, probably. Google is Microsoft bigger than Google?
I don't think so. I don't think so
either. I don't think Facebook is either.
I think Microsoft has.
Apple's probably the biggest, huh? Than Google?
Apple's got more cash.
Yeah. They have more cash than most countries. People don't realize that.
No.
And they're every day buying out a company for an engineer. They'll need like this one or two engineers.
Oh, you don't want to move over to us? Fine, we'll buy the whole company.
So did you find out the New York Magazine's approval matrix?
They do these every single week. So they got this one for highbrow, brilliant, lowbrow, and despicable. And they like put people and products and businesses and like verbs into like these quadrants.
Verbs.
So they've been taking life, all these different multifaceted, prismatic aspects of life and shoving them into a two-dimensional thing.
Well, but we do that with everything.
That's the point, and it's not correct. What if you start doing this with people's genders? Are they going to be happy about this?
No.
Not one bit.
No, especially nowadays.
Not one bit.
No one wants to be put in a box.
You want to put them in a box? Go ahead.
Take people's sexuality and let's make a grid.
Yeah, good. Let's do the sexuality grid.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. What happens when someone's flying across all the different grids? What if they go through it?
Yeah.
What if they transition out of people?
I want to go through that
and go to animals or
sexual matrix wormhole.
What if it's into plants? Yeah, what if it's into plants? You know what I mean?
No, but I mean when you think about it, especially when it comes to people trying to define other humans.
Yeah.
You know, this is where the rubber meets the road. No pun intended. You know, talking about archaic systems. We did a whole podcast on that with
I can't
rubber tires.
I can't be triggered right now.
But human beings, we have so many variables. To mathematically put an equation to a human is impossible.
It is impossible.
Maybe you could predict traffic models, stuff like that, you know, because you have certain outcomes. You have certain predictions because you know from 9 to 5 these people. But now COVID hits and people stay at home and now more people are working. What are you going to say? Oh, what is LA going to turn around and say? Oh, we had a 70% reduction in traffic, you know. And then, but it's like, well, what's the catalyst? Well, there's a virus rolling the freak around. How do you describe that in your mathematical equation?
How do you mathematically describe fear?
Yeah.
Let me ask you another one. This two-dimensional grid defining people's thought. They use it in psychiatry also, right? And psychoanalysis.
They call it the spectrum.
Let me ask you something. Say I'm thinking about a past event. Okay? But I'm thinking about it right now in a current state for how I want to decide about my future. And it's causing me to shift my ideas of how I think about it or how I think about myself. Think about how many dimensions of that thought are happening at once. I'm in multiple places of time, acting in one specific vector of time to change my place physically. Think about that. You absolutely
can't.
cannot describe human beings in a two-dimensional sphere. But everything we do, all of our technology, everything that's going, medicine, you name it, marketing, our whole world is on a 2x2 matrix.
Well, we just blew consulting firms out of the water.
This
is
joke.
What they do.
Yeah, no, but it's a joke.
But they, I mean, I don't want to go into the wormhole of marketing, but I know marketing, so that's my job, and that's all it is. It's saying, well, let's create an avatar of who our ideal customer is. Well, they're Jim, and he's 43 years old, and they have these fake pictures of people, and they're here's this single mom, and she's doing this, and it's just like. I understand to get a clear picture of your brand and what your brand, I mean, certain brands gravitate towards certain people. I get that, but you don't know. Well, it's like, for instance, like North Face. I have this shirt on right now and you have Nike shirt on. So let's use these two brands. These brands have been around a long time.
Yeah.
Both brands have been relevant and not relevant.
You're correct.
And both brands now is super relevant. And I always judge it off of teenagers wearing the shit.
And how many?
Will a teenager wear a North Face? So now you have a teenager wearing a North Face, and you have mom and dad wearing a North Face. So how do you explain that? You have an 18-year-old, and you have a 38-year-old wearing the same clothing.
And they've never
Nike. Everybody wears Nike,
and they've never climbed Everest before in their entire life.
Yeah, well, yeah. The clothes are designed the clothes are designed for outdoor performance.
When you first started, here's our 2x2 grid. We have super alpine climbers.
Yes.
We have just enthusiasts. You know what I mean?
So, so what is
now we have children wearing it that are going to school.
Well, I mean, I think majority of their clothes nowadays are probably just based for going from out your door and it's a little cold. Like Washington State, where I'm from, everyone wears the North Face in Patagonia.
Yeah.
It's just because it's nice. It's the branding.
But, I'm thinking about this, right? And you're talking about the marketing sense. If this doesn't work, as we're calling out, okay, if you can't take all these dimensions of a human being and put them properly into a 2x2 quadrant, how is it that you design things or understand your brand? Well, we figured it out at TARTLE.
Mm-hmm.
What is the one thing that everybody shares in common?
The one thing that everybody shares in common.
Yeah.
Data.
Yeah, and they're human beings.
And they're creating it.
They're human beings.
Right.
And they're creative.
Mm-hmm.
Which means if you are a creative human being,
mm-hmm.
that means you make things individually for yourself, specifically to you 24/7.
Well, you also have to look at it, like you were talking about this, putting people on the spectrum or whatever, or because it's labels.
Yeah.
It's this person I'm a psychiatrist and I'm looking at this matrix that I believe in. It's a belief system. Is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe in this, and so now you have people that you seem to have two different types of personalities. Well, let me look at my chart. Oh, you're kind of far left. You're schizophrenic. Oh, I am.
Oh snap! I'm schizophrenic. Doc, I need you to drug me up. Get me some lithium pills. But dude, if you let's think about this, right? Because now I'm on this and I'm all jacked up. If human beings are unique,
mm-hmm.
individually creative,
it's totally individual,
but we are all human beings.
Yes,
there's only one model that works.
We're all a snowflake.
There's only one, in quotation, model that works.
Right,
a unity model.
Yes,
you have to have one that is respectful and dynamic and specific for that human being. If you can model things for humans and not for a specific type of person to buy your brand, product, or service, now you're actually stepping into the future. I want you to leave this two-dimensional quadrant world behind and understand that you are limiting the amount of growth and evolution you have because you've put it into four walls.
Yes.
If you take a unity-based approach, it's a spherical approach. It's holistic. It's encompassing of everybody and does not exclude any specific party.
Because you can't.
Because you cannot.
Because if you take, and we've talked about this before, but you take all the greatest, most creative people in the world, and in the history of the world, all the most creative humans
mm-hmm.
that have ever existed, they're going to be off your charts.
Right.
They're going to be. I was watching a painter the other day, and he was talking, and then just started crying, and then he started yelling. But he's like one of the top painters in the world right now, just in a conversation. I'm like, people would think this guy's crazy, but his artwork is breathtaking.
Yeah.
So, but that's just part of it.
That's just part of it.
That's part of him as an individual, of who he is. He's not crazy.
No.
He's creative.
He's creative.
His brain works in a whole different way.
And what does the 2x2 also tell you? Oh, the top right's the best? My top right quadrant? What happens when you take a unity model and you place a dot on your sphere?
How about New Yorker magazine? How about you go to art and put your matrix on fucking artist?
Yeah, tell me which art is brilliant, highbrow, despicable, or lowbrow.
Oh no, great artists on how creative they are and how crazy they are at the same time.
Why is it for you to say that someone's more creative than the next?
Who gets to label this? That's what I was getting to.
That's the problem.
Who gets to label?
And this is what I was getting at.
Who labels humans?
Bro, the importance. This is what I'm saying. You're saying that the humans in the top right corner are best. But what happens when you take a unity-based model and you plot a point on the sphere?
Wasn't somebody in the 1920s? Wasn't there a program of doctors? It started with a capital E, eugenics, saying who was best and who wasn't.
But here's my point. You ready for this?
Yes.
Just listen to my metaphor and let me carry us through this. Before I get into Harvard.
Carry on my wayward son.
There'll be peace when you are done.
Okay, do your matrix.
All right, lay your weary head to rest. Don't you cry no more.
I won't.
Okay. We take a unity-based model.
Right.
We're gonna plot a point on the sphere.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I plot a point on the sphere and I rotate this ball around, is that point any different than another point that I put on there?
No, because the axis is centered. Yeah.
Is it any more important? No. It's just the outside of the sphere, correct? So now let's take human beings. I'm going to take you and you're my little point, and I'm going to put you somewhere on the globe. You're my little pinpoint. I'm going to spin the globe around. I'm going to shake it up. Is you standing in one place more important than another?
No.
Not one bit.
Not one bit. Yeah.
So whether it's you as a human being standing on the earth or you as a human being in your thought, in your actions, it does not make you any better or less than anyone else. Because you are individually unique within that specific vector of space and time. Okay, as a three-dimensional human being with a multi-dimensional thought. And you cannot apply two-dimensional aspects of mathematics to something that sits in 3 dimensions on a sphere. There's a difference between a square and a sphere. And these are the difference in our systems.
So I see what you're saying. A square and a sphere.
Yes.
So whenever I look at the globe, it's very easy. It's tilted on an axis.
Yeah.
And I see somebody in Russia and I see somebody in the United States. What's the difference?
There is no difference. It's a unity-based model.
My matrix, my chart shows it's different.
Your matrix idea is that Russia is different than the United States. It's only different because of political ideology and fake borders.
But the human interactions and the way they interact and the things that they do is the same. Humans do the same thing.
You know what humans do? They interact.
Yeah.
They are humans. They are just what they are.
But is that, so to get back to TARTLE and close this out, because
I'm not done. I'm going to riff all day on this.
Yeah. Grids. So somebody creating data in Russia and somebody creating data in the United States.
Yeah.
Both of them are on Facebook, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
How...
Or VK.
Or VK in Russia. So how do we look at that data, and then how can a company come in and purchase the data from humans?
You need to look at that data, not as in a quadrant where you can classify it into some specific category. You need to look at it as absolute uniqueness. You need to look at every single person as an outlier. Malcolm Gladwell said, let's just look at the outliers. No. That's a problem. That's a statistical flattening of who we are. Every single individual person's an outlier.
Yeah, well, I mean, I read that book a long time ago, and I understand what he's getting at. You know, like pay attention to the outliers. You know, because they're the ones that are creating the future. But so you move your matrix to fun outliers. So what are you doing? Just move. So here's your main matrix, and then here's outliers.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to move the matrix over here and create a new one based off the outliers. Well, what did you just do? Now we're into looking at data, and we're into looking at the past.
Yep.
And that is not cool.
No, it's
We've
not
talked
cool.
about that 100,000 times. When you start to look at data, when you look at past data, what does that do for you?
It doesn't do you anything good.
No, you're being passive aggressive and regressive, and you're not getting the full scoop.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And what do they say?
Thank you.
What do they say about historical data is not indicative of future gains?
No. Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
Finance tells you this. Nobody listens to it. You still use all these financial analysis on historical price.
You know why
data.
charts work so well? It's because everybody's using them.
Yeah.
And so if you get
That's why everyone's
statistically,
saying the two-dimensional thing works well. No, it doesn't. Just
No, it's-
because
it's-
everybody adopted it doesn't mean it was the right way to
it's
describe it.
multifaceted, prismatic, it's
five-dimensional wormhole.
with a hidden.
Oh, hidden wormhole.
Yeah, you find it.
Don't step on the grid.
Where's
anywhere.
Waldo?
It'll suck you
Where's
into the
the
wormhole.
wormhole?
Yeah. Point is, you have to
What is
take on
this point?
take on a spherical, holistic, unity-based approach and understand that every single piece of data created by human beings are absolutely unique.